Hey, and welcome to alchemist.camp, where we learn Elixir by building things. Today is going to be an update on the redesign of alchemist.camp, and specifically how I set up SCSS to use Bootstrap Sass, basically. Although a lot of this will be relevant if you're using any CSS processor or moving stuff around in Brunch. So, first, site news. I have basically modeled out how I'm going to split up the new site. I'll have context for accounts, content, analytics, and other. I'm going to be, actually there's quite a bit here. I think I'll just go over this in another video, but basically I've got a system made for logging events and sending them to Keen, and for having several kinds of content that have similar characteristics. Like there will be articles, and there will also be episode pages for these YouTube episodes, and they'll have a lot of the same features. Like they could be published or not, they could be visible by non-premium members or not, they can be liked by a user or not, but they won't be the same models. For example, episodes would include a link to a YouTube video that would be part of the schema, as well as an amount of time for how long the video is, so that users can sort episodes by how long they are. Anyway, I'll go over that in another video. For today, let's look at setting up Sass. So I'm using Brunch because that's standard in Phoenix. So there is a brunch-sass, or a Sass Brunch. The current version seems to have some kind of conflict with some of its dependencies, so I'm actually running it off of master instead of off of 10. What was it? 2.10.12, something like that. I guess you'll have to check the situation when you get there. Importantly, this is using Node Sass version 4.0. With previous versions, there were some problems with the build. And importantly, Node Sass uses Node JIP. Node JIP lets you include native NPM dependencies. For example, they might be C files, C++ files that get compiled down to binary and then included in your JavaScript project. In this case, Node Sass is a native project. Node JIP has hundreds of GitHub errors and people struggling with it and complaining with it. So if you run into any problems, be sure you go to the page and be sure to read the specific instructions on installation. One thing to point out that might be of relevance to anybody is you're going to want to use Python 2.7, not version 3, or at least make sure you have Python 2.7 in your path. And for Windows specifically, it's actually improved a lot. Used to be people had to go through a lot of the same stuff that I've gone through with Elixir, just because the library authors have maybe not done a good job of searching for nmake or whatever C compiler you've got. But now Microsoft has made something called Windows-Build-Tools, and this will basically get all the stuff you need, like in terms of C compilers and setting up your path so that they can be found, and it'll also install Python 2.7 for you. Basically just do the whole thing. Highly recommended, and you probably won't run into any problems. Just mentioning it because there are 177 open issues and a whole lot on GitHub as well. So with this in my package JSON, I guess font awesome, you can get it or not, although it is pretty nice. jQuery is still a Bootstrap dependency, and what else I get? Popper.js is, I don't remember what that's for. And then I got TurboLinks, which if you have worked with Rails is pretty nice. It's basically just a JavaScript library that will make it feel like you have a front-end app. You won't really. It'll just be following from one link to another in your site without doing an entire page load. It'll just get it through JavaScript, and it'll handle routing for you and all that. So it's not quite as quick and snappy as a front-end framework, but it's a lot faster than a whole page load. And if you're using Phoenix especially, it can actually feel like it is a front-end framework. It's pretty cool. Anyway, once you've gotten your Sass Brunch and various dependencies installed, then you're going to have to make a few changes in your Brunch config.js. First is you're going to want to load your app.css file last. You're going to be deleting app.css and creating an app.css in your assets, and we want to make sure that gets loaded in last. And what else have we changed? I included a copycat module to get the fonts out of Font Awesome, and I set up the Sass plugin and the include paths to get the style sheets out of Bootstrap. This is not a specially compiled one. This is just the one that's in the repo, and also to get Font Awesome. And set precision to 8, which you need for Sass. And Bootstrap needs jQuery, both available as $1 and as the word. So do that, and then set Bootstrap Sass here so that it can be imported as Bootstrap. And one other change in dev, you've got to set it up so that under your live reload patterns, you've got SCSS as well as CSS. That way, when you change an SCSS file, it will reload everything for you. And I think that was it. Let's look at the files again. We've got all of that. I'll show you the app CSS. So I'm just importing the fonts and then importing Bootstrap, which we got from here in our Brunch config, Bootstrap Sass. And in Phoenix, by default, you've got that huge, like line 9 or whatever it is of your CSS file that includes all of Bootstrap. Just copy paste it in. Instead of that, now we've got Bootstrap imported from Bootstrap, and then inside custom SCSS file, I've got my own stuff, and this is including Bootstrap and Font Awesome and so forth. And I've set up a whole bunch of fonts, and I've set up some various rules for how I want some things to look. These are not the colors I'm going to go with. I actually just copy pasted these from a different project, but once they're in, we can see that everything is set up and working. Then in addition to these changes, I've altered the layout. So let me jump to that here. So our layout, we've got an app.html.ex. I've created a header and a footer. The footer is completely new. I just added a date, and there will be a link to an about page, but there is no about page made yet. I might just leave that at the top. So I've just left that commented out. And then I copied the header that was in app.html into its own file and made some changes to it. I'm using the Alchemist Camp logo, and I've put an episodes link. There is no episodes route yet, so I'll have to change that in the future. It'll probably be called episodes, although whatever it is, I'll make it dynamic. And then a link to an about page, which is also to be created. This main CSS file, or this main layout file, has mostly what it had before. The top is unchanged. In this container here, I'm generating the flashes for the alerts and for the errors, and it's only generating them if they exist. If you look in a default Phoenix project, which I guess I can just go back in time to see, we've got this alert with info, an alert with danger in every single page it's loaded. I've just changed it so that we don't load it unless there is something going on, and I'm just matching for errors, infos, and successes. And if there is a message, then I will flash it and set up the styles in such a way that matches, and I've got a message there. And these will be coming in the assigns, which I'll set up later. The most interesting thing here to see is inside this main role, I've just included the header.html and the footer.html, and I've positioned them around render view module, view template, all that. This one line renders everything else. Let's have a look at what the actual site looks like running. This is the one that's online. Here is what I've got. So notice, still the same default page. The home page hasn't been changed at all. It's just the layout that's been changed. We've got this header, and keep in mind I've imported a whole style sheet, so that's why it looks like this. If we were to change the order of the header and this view line, like so, you can see that the whole position of it in the page moved. And same deal if we were to put the main content at the bottom, you'll see the footer is up here instead of below the main content. This may not be something you've really examined before in your layouts, but it's kind of neat and worth taking a look at. And I personally much prefer breaking out headers and footers and all that stuff into separate files instead of creating a monstrous layout that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's pretty much it for today. Pretty much just setting up Sass Brunch and making some layout changes, but I hope it saves you a bit of time, and see you next time.